You're listening to the Warriors of Dystonia podcast, a podcast sharing the stories and journeys of people whose lives are affected by dystonia. My name is Carl and I've had cervical dystonia since 2007. I started this project to spread awareness of the condition, as well as reminding those in the dystonia community that they are not alone. In 2021, I released a book called Warriors of Dystonia that collects first-hand experiences of people all over the world who have been affected by dystonia. You can find the book on lulu.com, that's LULU.com, as well as Amazon. All profits from sales go to dystonia charity and research. Now, on to the podcast. In this episode of the Warriors of Dystonia podcast, I chat with Kate, who was kind enough to share her experience of living with benign, essential blepharospasm. This is a form of dystonia that affects the muscles of the eyes, which, at its worst, can leave Kate unable to see as she's unable to open her eyes at all. Kate, first of all, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and, sharing a little bit about yourself and your story. And, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, what sort of things you're into?
Yeah, sure. I live in Devon and I have a husband and two children. My children are 11 and 8, and I was a freelance book editor. I worked on mainly sports and fitness and well-being, a bit of travel. So that was my profession. So I've always had an interest in yoga, well-being. I love reading, psychology, all that kind of stuff. And that actually feeds into my life now, I find. So you have to wonder if these things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. Now I'm writing a book. It's part memoir, part manual. It's a memoir of what's happened to me suffering from a chronic health condition, but it's a manual also of what things have helped me. It's a manual kind of about brain health, but also just about general health and things like slowing down, getting your sleep right, all kinds of things that I think if I had been able to read at the beginning would have been really useful. And I am kind of hoping that it will appeal to people, not just people with dystonia, but anybody who has an interest in how you manage being diagnosed with a rare condition that is going to stay with you for the rest of your life. I hope it's got some really useful information in it for people. So that's what I'm doing now. First draft has got to be completed by Easter. Okay. So I'm kind of up against it a bit now. Because I was like, oh yeah, that's ages away. Yes, I'm hoping that somebody will be interested in publishing it. And if they don't, I will self-publish. That's my current plan. It kind of ties in with my blog on Instagram, which is called Blinking and Breathing. And that's what I'm doing now. And I'm really enjoying it.
How long have you been affected by dystonia and what kind is it?
Well, I have benign essential blepharospasm, which is a dystonia that affects the muscles of the eyes, the eyelids. I started to get symptoms about 4 years ago. Basically, at my worst, I'm functionally blind. I cannot open my eyes at all. At the moment, I'm doing pretty good. Although having said this, my symptoms have been worse over the last couple of weeks, but today my eyes are behaving. Okay. So basically, when you try and open your eyes, you can't open your eyes, which is quite difficult to explain to somebody because, I 5 years ago would have said, what do you mean you can't open your eyes? The messages from my brain to my eye muscles are not working properly. I started to get symptoms about 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago. And at first, I felt like I was squinting a lot against the sun. My eyes became very light sensitive. I suspected that my prescription was wrong in my glasses, but I had my eyes tested and there was nothing different. Over the course of probably about 6 months, my symptoms got worse and worse. I was squinting lots. I couldn't bear to be in sunlight. And then all of a sudden, I was having to hold one eye open to watch TV. It felt like my eyes weren't mine, that somebody had put somebody else's eyes in.
Oh.
That's the best description I can come up
Yeah.
with. And I couldn't operate them properly. It was quite bizarre.
Prior to that, no real eye issues at all?
No. I mean, I'm short-sighted. I wear glasses. I have done all my adult life, but nothing like this at all.
Has your dystonia changed in any way since when it began?
Yeah, it has. And it changes all the time, actually. I went quite quickly from not being able to keep my eyes open to not being able to open my eyes. And that sounds like I'm saying the same thing there, but there's a subtle difference. I couldn't keep my eyes open to start with, like tiredness. We say, oh, I could barely keep my eyes open. I was so tired, but then I couldn't open my eyes. From that, I have also been all the way to my eyes only being open about 10% of any day and unable to leave the house, unable to walk unaided, pretty much completely blind. And that is definitely exacerbated by stress. So I was at my worst in the first lockdown. We were homeschooling, everyone was in the house. I mean, everybody knows what it was like, and it was difficult for everyone. My condition is definitely made worse by stress. It's not caused by stress, but made worse by stress. From there, I've gone back up. So I'm doing pretty good at the moment. I can do lots of things that I wasn't able to do 2 years ago. So yeah, it changes all the time. It changes over the course of a day as well. So I can start off pretty bad, but then with lots of meditation and lots of calming the nervous system, I find that really helps, really, really helps.
And with regards to diagnosis and visits to the doctors, and how long did it actually take to get a satisfactory diagnosis?
Having heard other people's stories since, I think I was pretty lucky. At the time, it felt like it was taking forever. It didn't feel like I was being lucky. I first saw my doctor in April 2018, and I was diagnosed in July of that year. I was diagnosed that soon because we decided to see a private specialist because we just wanted to know what was going on. But having said that, my NHS appointment was in September, so I would have been diagnosed within 6 months. Once I saw a neurologist, he immediately told me what was wrong with me. But the doctors that I saw running up to that thought it was an autoimmune condition called myasthenia gravis. But as soon as the specialist saw me, the neurologist, he said, no, you haven't got myasthenia gravis, you have got blepharospasm. And he showed us a video on YouTube of somebody with blepharospasm, and we immediately said, yeah, that's what I've got, definitely.
Once they had given you this diagnosis, how did you feel having a name for what was going on?
Well, in some ways it's reassuring because you think that somebody can help you or you can help yourself once you know what you're dealing with. But when the word incurable is like inserted, you feel quite scared. You feel frightened. We expect doctors in the West to fix us. This is our mentality here. Once you have a label, you think, oh, well, okay, they know what to do about that. But unfortunately, when you have a rare condition like dystonia, that doesn't apply necessarily. Yeah, I felt relieved that somebody could tell me what was wrong. I also felt relieved because it had been suggested to me that it was psychological. To know that I had a real illness with a name took quite a lot of pressure off me. The danger with labeling something as psychological is that you can feel like it's your fault somehow and that you could stop it if you wanted to enough.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's not very good for people who suffer with dystonia. It's not very good for their mental health, really. So yeah, relief and fear. That's how I felt.
I think I already know the answer to this, but prior to going through this, had you heard of dystonia before?
No, I did not even know such a thing was possible, that your brain could suddenly decide to not operate your muscles correctly.
Why do you think that so few people are actually aware of dystonia?
Well, I mean, it's just rare, isn't it? We've all heard of heart disease and cancer, and there's lots of money and research goes into those more common, sadly, illnesses. One thing I found is that with dystonia, you have to become your own scientist. You have to become your own doctor almost. The information isn't there. You have to root it out for yourself. I mean, I don't know how many people have blepharospasm. The statistic that I saw was it was about 7,000 in the UK, which sounds quite a lot, actually. I don't know where they all are. but it's obviously not a lot. It's not a lot. So you have to kind of become your own doctor. And there's no research, or there's barely any research into these things, which is why what you're doing is really great, because you're collecting everybody's stories together, trying to raise awareness. Because, yeah, had you ever heard of dystonia before you?
No, I hadn't. No. The only reason I managed to find my dystonia and find out about the type that I had was from typing in silly terms into Google one day. I just typed in turny neck thing. I literally just typed in turny neck thing, because like yourself, it had been suggested that my condition was down to me being stressed and going through anxiety and depression, which at the time I really wasn't. I was so far from that. My second daughter had been born. I loved being a dad. I always wanted to be a dad. And so I had convinced myself for a long time that perhaps because the dystonia came out of nowhere, this was all in my head. So no, I had not heard of it at all.
I think doctors in the West, if they can't easily identify what is wrong with you, they do have that in their pocket, that psychological diagnosis. And I think because we trust doctors so much to give us the answer, that we actually can take that on and just think, well, perhaps it is psychological, perhaps it's something that you can't even begin to fathom how you would make something like this up.
Absolutely. I think the unpredictable nature and some of the things you were talking about, where dystonia is almost certainly very reactive to stress and things like that, really doesn't help us at all. When we talk to a doctor and we say, it flares up if I'm tired, or it flares up if I've had a bad day, or if the weather's bad. For me, if it's incredibly cold, it really plays havoc with my dystonia. And I think that really does give them a little bit extra ammunition when they turn around and say, actually, this could be down to stress.
We tick lots of boxes for them in that respect. I got asked endlessly, are you stressed? My answer was, yes, I'm stressed. My eyes don't work. Which comes first?
What I was going to ask next is about medication and treatment that you take. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
The standard treatment for this is Botox injections around the eye. Basically, it blocks the faulty signal to clamp your eyes shut. When I was diagnosed, I was told that was the standard treatment. And so that's the route I went down. I like the idea more natural remedies. I've never been the kind of person to take a paracetamol even unless my headache is really, really bad. Whilst I was waiting for the Botox, I tried acupuncture. It didn't work for me, but I think it's one of those things that if you know more about your condition and yourself, it has a better result. I would return to try that one day, but it's very expensive. So we knocked that on the head. Then in the meantime, my appointment had come up for Botox injections, which were administered by the Royal Eye Infirmary here. I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent now. I'm not looked after by neurology because my treatment is given by the Eye Infirmary. I'm looked after by them. So I also feel that with conditions like this, you can fall down a gap because this is a fault with my brain. It's not a fault with my eyes. Nobody in neurology is looking after me in this country. I think that's quite difficult. But back to the Botox, I went to have Botox at the Eye Infirmary. I had really, really varying experiences. The first time it worked, and it worked for probably about 3 or 4 weeks. Then I was right back to square one. The second time, it worked for a couple of days. And then the third and fourth time, it didn't work at all. It did absolutely nothing. I was very uncomfortable with the concept of having something injected into my body for potentially the next 40 years at regular intervals and it not having a reliable effect. Now, having said that, Botox is great for some people with this condition. I think everybody also has their own route out of dystonia, and you have to find out what works for you. but Botox didn't work for me. And so I stopped using it. The thing I found has helped is a bit like you plugging in turny neck thing into the internet. Quite near the beginning of this experience, we found something on the internet called the Farius technique, which is a movement disorder therapy for all types of dystonia, not just blepharospasm. It's run by somebody in Canada called Dr. Farius, and he has devised like a movement therapy that's exercises that can retrain your brain to operate the muscle normally. And I've been following that for, since the beginning of 2019, I've been doing that. And that is what I have found has worked best for me. I liked the idea that it was addressing the root cause rather than a sticking plaster approach. It takes a long time to work, but that has really, really worked for me. He has great results with people. I think people who start it expect to have quicker results than they get. And in fact, I totally went down that path. He says very clearly, this could take you months or years. And I thought, oh yeah, months or years, but it won't take me months or years. It'll take me till Christmas kind of thing. So I'm talking about, other people. But actually it has taken me years. And I find that quite funny. It's actually taught me something about myself, really. But it does take a long time, but it gives you tools to control your condition yourself rather than being controlled by doctors and like waiting for your next appointment and lurching from appointment to appointment, which is certainly where I was. You feel more in control of yourself. You feel more in control of your condition. And actually, when you're diagnosed with something rare like this, that's what you feel you have lost. You have lost control over your body, what happens to you, what you can do on a daily basis. And to be given back some of that control, I think is an absolute godsend. The thing about Dr. Farius as well is that he suffered from dystonia himself years ago. And so he has, a unique understanding of what it is like to have, whereas I'd be surprised if any neurologists or many neurologists have actually had that diagnosis themselves. It's brilliant. I can't speak highly enough of it.
How have friends and family responded to this, Kate?
Well, I've had some amazing support from my friends and family. I mean, really, at one point, I couldn't even do the school run. And like so many friends around here have helped me out. My family have been brilliant. It's been hard. It's really hard for your family. I think it's as hard, if not harder, for them because they have no direct experience of what you're actually experiencing. It's difficult for them. I mean, my children they must have been 8 and 5 when I was diagnosed. So it's quite scary for children. I mean, I didn't know this existed, so they certainly wouldn't have done. And I went through a long time feeling bad that they were missing out on experiences because, I had to stop driving. I couldn't take them out very much. But actually, I think that it's taught them really positive things about life, and it's taught them how to be empathetic to people, how to understand that everybody's lives are different. And my little boy, I mean, he guides me to school and back sometimes. He's amazing. They're absolutely amazing. I think managing expectations of family and friends can be challenging because you have your own expectations of how things are going to pan out, and so do they. That can be difficult. If you have a sudden relapse or something, they have to adjust as well. I find that difficult, not so much now, but in the early stages of my diagnosis, that was difficult to manage. But I've had just amazing support from people, and people who've been really patient with me when I was like, no, I can't do this. No, I can't do that. I was concentrating on everything I couldn't do. And I must have driven some of my friends mad, but they were all beautiful to me. And I'm just so grateful for that.
With dystonia affecting people in lots of different ways, somebody that was new to this world, that was just coming into it right now, or if it was yourself back in the day, what sort of advice would you give to yourself about to go on the same sort of journey that you've been going on for the past 4 years, Kate?
I would first of all say this is going to take some time. This is going to take some time, and be really compassionate to yourself. Be super kind to yourself, because this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard for you and people around you, but you will get through. Speak to other people who have the same thing as you. They won't all be having the same experience, and they won't all have the same solutions. Some of them will want to do things that you think, oh gosh, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. But it makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel like somebody else understands what you're going through. And that's like gold, really. Another thing I would say is try and root out an expert. Try and do your own research about your condition, and find somebody that you trust to help you, because that has just been life-changing for me. Yes, you would say, you've got to be cautious because there's quacks out there that will tell you to take this supplement, that supplement, but just trust your instincts. I think most people are good at knowing what's a good idea and what isn't, and just trust yourself, trust yourself, have faith in yourself. Yeah, and just be exceptionally kind to yourself and patient. I can say this from like 4 years hence, I didn't do all of these things, but that's what I would say to myself 4 years ago. I would actually also try and be open-minded as well. I mean, I've always had an interest in meditation and yoga and all that kind of stuff, which is really soothing to the nervous system. So that was my go-to. But I understand that lots of people, that's not the background they come from. But try and be open-minded. Just try these things, because anything you can do to calm your nervous system is only going to help you. It's only going to help you. It can't do any damage at all.
Kate, since having dystonia, what would be your greatest achievement? What are you most proud of?
There's a couple of things, actually. I took myself, just before the pandemic hit, I took myself to Spain and back on my own, which at one point was just like a crazy suggestion. But I took myself to Spain and back. I was quite proud of that. I ran park run kind of November last year. So I was a runner. Before this happened, I was a runner. In fact, just before I was diagnosed, I ran a half marathon, and I had to stop running, which was so hard. I had a real like psychological battle with myself over that. I've completely accepted that now, but they were starting a new park run in the park near where I live, and my husband was going to run it, and I thought, I could just walk at the back. I'm just going to walk at the back because it might be fun. So I went intending to walk at the back with like my coat on and everything. And then I thought, should I just try a little run? So I tried a little, I thought, look, I'm running anyway. So I ran, not all of it, but, a fair bit of it.
Yeah.
Everyone thought I was mad because I was wearing a coat, They must have thought I was some crazy lady that turned decided to carry on running with everybody else. Yeah. Anyway, so I was very proud of that. And that was unexpected. I wasn't planning that. The thing that I am most proud of, though, over the last 4 years, is admitting I needed help and asking for help, because I wasn't the kind of person who did that. And now I will ask for help if I need help, and people will always help you. People just want to help you. It creates a lovely bond between you when you ask for help and somebody gives you help. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, is just that. It sounds really tiny, but it's really important to ask for help.
Okay, before we finish up, I just wanted to see if there were any messages or anything you wanted to say to friends and family, anything to the dystonia community.
Just to all my friends and family who've just been amazing, who've just been really amazing. I know it's been a difficult journey for lots of you as well. And we're still on the journey. We don't know what's going to happen next, but I kind of know that people have got my back, and I really appreciate that so much. I'm very lucky. To like the wider dystonia community, well, this is a horrible thing to go through, but you might find that your life improves eventually when you have dystonia. I certainly feel like a happier person now to before, bizarrely. I don't quite understand the mechanics of that, but I think it has forced me to slow down and think about my health. And I've met some excellent people through having it, and yeah, I understand myself a bit better. It's hard, but you will get through.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Kate. I really appreciate your time.
It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Warriors of Dystonia podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can reach me via the Warriors of Dystonia website, which is warriorsofdystonia.wordpress.com, or you can search for Warriors of Dystonia on Google, and that'll also bring you to my website. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook, and just do a search for Warriors of Dystonia and you'll be able to find me there. I'm Carl, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much again for listening. Take care.